This is Pioneer Field Agronomist Scott Eversgerd with a week of April 25th agronomy report. A couple things this week as we look at corn emergence. A lot of corn starting to come out of the ground. It was either planted there in March or planted over the last 10 days. When evaluating stands, again, what we're evaluating on a 30-inch rows would be about 17.5 linear feet. Again, just count the number of plants in that 17.5 feet, multiply by 1,000, and that should be your per 1,000 plants per acre. Some of the issues we're finding where maybe kernels aren't coming up, finding a few rotten kernels in some places that got more rain, where the ground got a little hard for some reason. We're finding some leafing out underground or just some flat out cold injury, along just a few of the reasons we're finding, and some kernels not making it out of the ground. From a wheat standpoint, the stripe rust still gaining steam in some areas, becoming very prevalent. Moving pretty quickly in some fields, although the rust species runs on about a 7 to 10 to 12 day cycle. If you're hitting that cycle right with some sunshine, this thing's going to come on pretty quick. So make sure you're scouting susceptible varieties pretty closely and making those treatments if you need to. Another thing about the wheat, the heading is starting in some of the early varieties, and expect that to really continue this week pretty strongly. With heading means in about 7 to 14 days for most varieties, we will be looking at that fusarium head scab infection period. So if you're thinking about spraying for head scab, that's going to happen over the next 7 to 14 days. So be thinking about that, get the product on hand, get the plane scheduled, whatever you need to do. It does look like the 2-week forecast is going to put pretty favorable conditions for head scab infection. Also finding quite a few aphids in the wheat. From an aphid standpoint, the spring thresholds are much higher, 20 to 50 aphids per plant. Don't worry a lot about aphids that are down in the canopy of the wheat. What we do worry about it, they would get bad enough to get up on the head. And as you get developing kernels, they would start sucking or feeding on those developing kernels, causing damage. So look out there for aphids as well, and make sure those populations aren't too high. From an alfalfa standpoint, I'm sure most of you are aware there's a pretty good batch of weevil in the alfalfa right now. Again, with a pretty unfavorable forecast for trying to cut and dry hay, cutting may not be an option for some. For some that can deal with wet forage, whether wet bale or chopping a silo, cutting it's a good option. You can spray it, another good option. Probably the two best options we have for the alfalfa crop. And the last thing, from an armyworm standpoint, the armyworm catches from traps have been pretty high on the moth counts. So here in about another 2 to 3 to 4 weeks, it's probably something we're going to have to keep an eye on. We'll continue to monitor the counts, and if we start finding anything, we'll definitely get it out in this message. But again, the first fields that are going to be affected are going to be whatever's the lushest, greenest fields when the flights come in. So typically that's our wheat fields. We'll see them in first, pastures, hay fields, things like this. And then as the corn grows, if we're continuing to see high counts, we'll even see some move into corn. So, as always, if you have any questions, please contact your local Pioneer rep. Thanks.